This is the Aftermarket Radio Network.
Welcome, everyone, to yet another episode of Diagnosing the Aftermarket A to Z. I'm Matt Fanslow, and I'm not going to tell the story the way it happened. I'm going to tell it the way I remember it. That and guest star Margaret Light, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist with Equilibrium Therapy Services here in the great state of Minnesota. Welcome to the podcast yet again.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I'm so excited for this one.
Oh, yeah?
I am.
I haven't told you what it's about yet. No.
That would be a shock.
Well, before we get going here too far, let's get a word from our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. NAPA Autotech's team of ASC Master Certified instructors are conducting over 1,200 classes covering 28 automotive topics. To see a selection, go to napaautotech.com for more details. So yeah, you and I were kind of talking, and I was telling you a little bit of a story that you're like, shut up. Let's talk about this on the podcast because I think it could lead to a really, really good conversation. So it's story time.
Good. Okay.
If you're driving, I don't know, hit some caffeine, I might put you to sleep. But I think it has to do with expectations, or I don't think it, I know it. But this is now a couple months ago. My wife and a good friend of hers, I'm not trying to put myself over, okay? But I could tell between work and school for my wife, Danielle, and her friend, who you can't help but tell a little bit of her story in that she was with somebody that had substance use disorder, and she has 3 kids with them. A daughter who's close to the same age as my youngest, or I should say Danielle's and my youngest. And then she has 2 twins that are just recently turned 1. But while working for a mental health facility, he had relapsed, unbeknownst to really anybody, I believe, accidentally overdosed and passed away, leaving her with 3 kids. And at the time, newborns that they would have been very recently born. Her and Danielle kind of connected, and just being overwhelmed with everything, with 3 kids, twins that are infants, work. Now she is the sole income, hoops you have to jump through. You could just tell, like, the stress was overwhelming. So I kind of suggested they needed just a getaway, like even if it's one night, one evening. So they both like to go to casinos and play, whatever, slot machines, blackjack, doesn't matter. And so I said I'd watch the kids have at it. And, they took off whatever early afternoon, did whatever they did, shopping. They're at the casino. And I thought it would be really cool if they came back from the casino to their hotel room to find flowers, chocolates, treats. And then I had this built up in my head. And sometimes I joke around a little bit about like Clark Griswold, the character in the vacation movies, National Lampoon Vacation, European Vacation, Christmas Vacation, how they even address it in Christmas Vacation, how he builds up in his head how things are going to be. And then when they don't live up to it, which they're unreasonable expectations, in his case, for comedic effect, he's let down and all that. Well, I had kind of built up in my head what this might look like. They're going to walk in and, oh my God, and photos of the treats and thank you text messages and all that. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be to make this all happen. I called the hotel. They're not much help. But she brought up a good point. The host, whatever, the person working at the hotel, used DoorDash. Oh, duh. Okay, I've never used that before. Download the app. Nothing but pain. I can't get it to go through. It won't accept payment. It's just brutal. I'm on tech support. They're calling me. We're trying to figure this out. It's not working. I now have well over an hour, not quite hours invested in this, but relatively speaking, a lot of frustration invested in this. Finally, it's like deep six that. And I think I went with Uber Eats. Boom, flawless. It goes right through. I think I get everything bought at, I didn't go to Walmart. I think it was like a Cub Foods or something. And just variations of candy, flowers, as nice as flowers you could get at that time of day and all that. And I had this idea. I just thought it would be cool for them. One, legitimately, I thought it would be neat to just unsuspecting walk into the hotel room and there's flowers and candy and all that. So nothing. I don't hear nothing from them. And no text messages, no nothing. And then I go and really do the stupidest thing is, I kind of wake up at 2, 3 in the morning to go to the restroom or whatever, and I check my phone. Stupid.
Yeah, don't do that.
I did it. Nothing. And it was almost like, well, not almost. I sent him text message like, really? Nothing. And then she must not have like opened it, but saw it. So I woke up at, 7, 8 in the morning, whatever it was, and went like, did I do it for them or did I do it for me? And I did it for them. So I deleted the text thinking, because it didn't give me the indication that they saw it or she saw it, my wife. Well, she saw it, not at the time I sent it, but at one point. She wasn't mad, but it was kind of like, did you do it for you or did you do it for us? But I did have an idea in my head of how this would play out, and you guys would just think it was neat, and not that you owed me anything, but that you wouldn't be able to help yourselves with, this is really cool. Like, wow, this is really neat. More story is they didn't walk in and there's like, whoever put the stuff in the room didn't put any effort into it. They just threw it all on the counter in bags and everything. It was not like they didn't grasp nothing. What I was trying to accomplish with this.
That's how they work.
It's just like, really? Like, you can't put yourself into this spot where, hey, I know what you're trying to do. Like, make it feel neat, something special. No, it's like they're in the bags and whatever. It meant a lot to them. They did say thank you and all that. I guess I'm not trying to defend them or anything, but in a way, I think I took a little bit from it because of the comment of like, really nothing? Because I was disappointed. Like, oh. So there you go. That's about all the time I got today. Thanks.
End of episode. Okay, good. So you had expectations.
I had a massive social construct in my head of how this was going to play out, and it's scripted. Okay, quite that far, but I absolutely did. I had an expectation, even though I didn't really view it that way. I thought it was just common courtesy, honestly. That's what I labeled it.
Right. You had expectations for them, and you had expectations for the Uber Eats person.
I did.
Yeah, Uber Eats doesn't do more than bags. Let's talk about expectations.
Fine.
We all have them.
I kind of expected you to want to do that.
Yeah, well, okay. Look, see, that was a reasonable expectation. Well done. You've made improvements. You have learned from this experience.
I try. I don't always succeed, but I do try.
Okay. So we should maybe define expectations and what they are specifically.
Do you want to do that, or are you going to let me do that?
Do you have a definition for them?
I have my definition.
Okay, let's compare. What is your definition of expectations?
I guess without trying to sound like elusive or anything, but I would say almost like a script in your head of how things will play out or should play out.
Yeah, not bad. Okay, so expectations are personal beliefs about events that may or may not happen. Specifically, they are a type of assumption about the future, usually based upon subjective and objective experiences. So personal experiences, cultural norms, desires, implicit and explicit agreements, things like that. They're also based on our individual kind of personalities and thought processes.
So what I said, no, just kidding.
Well, it's interesting what you said because you used the magic should. This is how things should be. I mean, it's good you used it because we can talk about it, but should is a judgment. Should is actually a cognitive distortion because it is an indication of a belief in and of itself. This is how you should act.
And I blame my parents and grandparents.
For the shoulds?
I mean, I don't know. Blame them. You wrecked me. There is a lot of that. I remember being around specifically the farm implement dealership, where somebody would bring something in and doesn't matter what, but we'll just say they brought in a chainsaw and it wasn't running, and my grandpa would do whatever, throw a spark plug in it, it would start, and the client would just say thank you, pick up the saw, and walk off. No offer to pay, no expectation to pay, nothing. And it wasn't like a regular client that had like a account up there. And my grandpa would be like, oh, okay, I'll remember that. And then the next time they needed something, he couldn't help them. Not just him, but my dad and all that. Like, there's expectations where if I did something for you, that you would show some indicator of appreciation. And it might be like offering money, that they would reject. Say, don't worry about it. Someday I'll need something from you. But the expectation was you are going to show some sort of appreciation for my time, my effort, my expertise, my blah, 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 whatever, on and on and on. And I catch myself doing that all the time with not just, professional type help, but little stuff like even around the house. Like, I did this. Where's the acknowledgement? Where's the show of appreciation? I catch myself doing it and I'm working on breaking myself of that.
Well, yeah, those are expectations, right? And there's expectations there about other people's behavior, which are the most obvious ones. But there's also expectations there around the communication that happens about that behavior. So this idea that, okay, I expect you to behave in this certain way. And if you don't, then the response is, I'm just going to remember that and then tell you next time I can't help you, is a super indirect form of communication, right? Versus an expectation of, oh, if you do something I find offensive, I'm going to say, hey, that was offensive to me, which would be a much more direct way of resolving that issue.
Yeah, direct. That's easier said than done.
I think for some people it is, right? That's sort of that cultural context around expectations around social groups and communications and how we talk. So Midwesterners tend to run pretty indirect.
I was just going to say, you live in Minnesota, right?
I do, but I'm more direct. And especially as a therapist, I run direct.
Yeah. Were you direct before? Or did you pick up being more direct as training and doing the job of being a therapist, counselor?
I think it was a bit of both. There was definitely a lot of training that went into it, but then there was also just this personal growth piece of I do not appreciate indirectness in people in any way. And so then instead of just looking at other people and saying, hey, I don't like that, I turned it back on myself and I'm like, okay, Margaret, if you don't like this, you need to sort out why you're communicating in this way and do better.
I would have just redirected it at them.
That's great. Good. You can do that, but there's an expectation there too.
Accept it a little bit and then you redirect it back.
I don't like it when you do this, so you need to change because I don't like how I feel when you do that.
Yes.
Healthy. That's a good strategy.
Could explain a few things, I guess.
Yeah, it could. This is true. But it's a set of expectations, right? So now in the Midwest, I had conflict with a supervisee not long ago because of my level of directness, because there are these societal expectations of, hey, we talk in this way, not this way, right? And then meaning gets attributed to that. Whereas with other people who run more direct, it would have been a different experience.
Yeah, it's a subject that has come up with a friend of mine, and I don't want to get off our topic at all. He's a elementary school teacher. He's actually been on the podcast quite a while ago, but he's an elementary school teacher. And he's just talking about how kids are taught to use I feel statements and to talk about their feelings. And he's wondering, over time, is this going to be a benefit? And I said, maybe, but I don't think so, because they don't teach you how to listen. They don't teach you how to accept that. So now in your scenario, being direct is usually really good. There could be coarse direct, which maybe could be counterproductive, but just being direct, that should be very good. And yet we're not taught how to accept that. I guess not to go right into the four horsemen, but people could become defensive right away.
Well, yes, they can, right? And I don't actually think that's off topic because it's still getting at this expectation idea, which is not only how do we expect people to behave, but how do we expect to be shown respect? So for some people, the expectation around respect is there's a direct component to it, right? A level of directness. But for other people, like in the Midwest, respect is sort of acted out, right? In terms of how do we talk about what is indirectness? What is niceness? And so there's still an expectation there around, I expect to be treated with this type of behavior from other people. And when other people do not conform to that expectation that I hold based on my experiences and assumptions and personal values and whatever else, then I have a reaction to it.
When I think about directness, it's not as much of an issue so much at the client at the point of sale. I'm sure it exists, but it just doesn't seem to manifest issues there as much. It's in the back. It's, coworker to coworker, manager to coworker, front of house to back of house. And that's where you see this thing become either conflicts or emotional, and you see the defensiveness right away, stonewalling. Those are the two you'd see like the most. And no wonder it's men usually involved, that you need to come correct or I'm going to respond this way.
Well, right. Very much so. And right, think about the set of expectations there. There are explicit and implicit expectations there, right? So implicit are just, right, these hypothetical two people, let's say manager and employee, coming into a scenario with their individual set of expectations that have maybe never been discussed. And then there can be some tension or stress or conflict there if those don't match up well. Whereas explicit expectations would be, like, I've done this with other supervisees where I say, listen, here's how I talk. Here's what to expect from me. The feedback I've gotten before is I can be really direct. I can be kind of intense. So now I've set this expectation, right? You could have this experience of me. And then I go a step further and say, and so if that's too much for you, or that doesn't work for you, or something I say doesn't sit right with you, I want you to just tell me. And so then I've also set an expectation of, okay, you could feel this, and here's what I want you to do with that. Now, whether they do that or not is up to them. But as a manager now, I fulfilled my role of, okay, I have warned you. I've told you what to do. We have something explicit. And I then give you an opportunity to say, yes, I'm okay with that, or no, I'm not. I don't think I can do that.
Yeah, that's not taught really anywhere.
Right. Yeah, I was just thinking that, right? That like, that's a therapist skill that isn't necessarily a management training skill that I think is commonly done, but it makes a ton of sense to do.
NAPA Autotech training sessions are being conducted day and night in a town near you. This training caters to every level within your organization, be it a mechanical assistant, a mechanical specialist, a technology specialist, or a driver safety calibration specialist. Imagine a one-stop shop training partner in NAPA Autotech that will lead your team to a path to greatness. Autotech's entry-level Build-A-Tech classes convert the untapped potential of your new hires into money-making mechanical specialists. Autotech's higher-level tech update classes introduce specialists to the world of ever-changing technologies, which prevents your shop from getting technologically stagnant. Remember, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And, turning to the front of the store, the Autotech Service Advisor class is an awesome way to hone your client advocate skill set, ultimately benefiting the customer through an improved vehicle repair experience. But it doesn't stop there. Imagine an electric vehicle class that takes your specialist well past the mundane, yet necessary safety topics. Well, it's here. Autotech's EV Ready training is a week-long curriculum that takes participants through a hands-on experience involving hybrids and electric vehicles. The session kicks off with the use of PPE and proper tooling while touching on required OSHA regulations. Then, the students dive into the lab vehicles to gain knowledge of the common high-voltage components on EV and hybrid vehicles and their function. Attendees will be taken on a path exposing them to different electric vehicle manufacturers to compare component form and location. Additionally, information about Level 1 and Level 2 charging systems will be included, along with a quick look at DC to DC charging. The operation and maintenance of subsystems are explored, including the different modes of Tesla operations, and so much more. So what are you waiting for? Commit to taking your business to the next level with NAPA Autotech training. I've been kind of going down the rabbit hole with a lot of this stuff, with revisiting Gottman stuff. So rather recently I had an episode where I monologued about if you want to connect better, or if you want to get along with your clients better, or your employees or coworkers and all that, go to marriage counseling. It ties into some other stuff, like down the rabbit hole on neuromarketing and psychoanalytics and stuff like that. But I keep coming back to really a lot of the stuff the Gottmans have laid out. And I explained in the episode that you're going to hear them mentioned a lot because you should, because in our world, which I'm probably saying a name people are unfamiliar with, which is kind of sad. So hopefully they look into them. But the Gottmans are to relationships, and I'm speaking vaguely, as somebody by the name of John B. Haywood is to internal combustion engines. and how they work and what goes in to make them work and why they work the way they work. That's kind of where the Gottmans are, as a rather loose, but I think an okay comparison. And the skills they talk about, the only reason I know about them is because I started reading about all this other stuff based off a lot of studying I did for substance use disorder, and then conversations with you, and then going down the road of the organism that is an organization of individuals working together, forcing my hand or forcing me into these subjects. And there you sit. Like, I think we've almost, as a society, have turned I feel statements into almost trigger words. You know what I mean? Almost like people say, like, oh, you got to work on your communication. And you hear communication, you're just like, oh, God. Okay, yeah, let's work on our communication then. What does that even mean? You know, it's like a vague statement now. They don't dive into what does that mean to validate? What does that mean to state a feeling? And yes, it helps to start out with I feel, but if you go to somebody without a feeling, what are they going to do with that?
This idea of kind of these interpersonal interactions or I feel statements directly get at this idea of what are our interpersonal boundaries, right? What's yours? What's mine? And then that ties into expectations too, because what I see is a lot of boundary crossings that happen around expectations and even I feel statements. So let's talk about boundaries for a second so it's clear. Okay. What do you own in life, no matter what's yours, no matter what happens?
Maybe my body.
Yeah, that's one. What else?
My mistakes.
True, right? Yes, and probably the things you do right as well. Yes. Okay, you're on the right track. Thoughts, feelings, actions, beliefs, personal values, morals, personality. To some degree, we own our property, right? We can lose that though. Our physical body to a certain degree. I mean, as long as we're not harming other people, we own our physical body. The place I see it, people get in the most trouble though, is around thoughts, feelings, beliefs, emotions, stuff like that. Because sometimes what we see happen with I feel statements is, well, I feel hurt that you think that. Okay, you're allowed to feel hurt about that. But there's a difference between saying, I feel hurt by that, which is your emotion and your responsibility to deal with, versus saying, I feel hurt that you think that, and then having the expectation that then the other person needs to change how they think based on your feeling. You can make a request, which is different than an expectation.
You're trying to leverage the I feel into really just assigning blame. Because of that, now it's off of you anyways, and putting the responsibility on them. Whereas, like you're mentioning before, like you can own your feelings. The other person can validate those feelings. A misconception I had was validation was concession. And that's not the case. That you can validate someone's feelings. And I'm not saying necessarily at that point, especially if it's emotional levels are high, whether they're in a personal relationship or even at work with a coworker or a colleague, manager, employee, whatever, that then you bring up, I validate your feelings, whatever the statements you're going to make to do so. And then, oh, by the way, you're wrong. Maybe wait, let them, for lack of a better term or phrase, get it out of their system, and then come back a little later and say, hey, could we revisit that? Or, hey, can you come to my office or, whatever. And I'd like to bring this up. I'd like to address something here.
There's a difference there between, so validating feelings and then coming back and saying you're wrong, which, okay, you're wrong for what? Thinking that, feeling that, whatever, right? Like, no, you're not. You can think and feel whatever you think and feel. It is possible as a manager in particular, like in an employment setting, to say, okay, I understand you don't like this. I understand you think it's dumb. I understand you don't agree with it. And we're doing it anyways.
Yeah.
But really, like, you can think it's dumb all day long. We're still doing it. You can hate the fact that you have to be at work on time all day long. You can hate it. That's still the expectation, and there's still consequences if you don't do it. The other piece I think people kind of get messy with the I feel statements is just because someone feels hurt or upset because of something you did doesn't automatically mean you did something wrong. So just because an employee doesn't like a new policy, it doesn't mean they're wrong for feeling that way, and it doesn't mean the policy is wrong. Just like if your boss asks you to stay late and you say no, it doesn't mean they were wrong to ask, but it also doesn't mean that anybody was wrong to say no, right? Where things get messy is when there's usually an unspoken expectation around, well, if I'm unhappy about this, you will change. Or if I ask you to do this, I'm not actually asking, I expect you to say yes.
Yeah, you can only experience a negative type of a feeling if you've been wronged somehow or something is unjust. That's not necessarily the case.
What do you mean? You can only experience a negative feeling if?
It's a misconception. Like if I feel hurt or I feel wronged.
Correct, yes.
It isn't because I was actually wronged, or vice versa. You know, there's people do the wrong things, but they made whoever feel very, very good.
Right. That's another cognitive distortion. We call it emotional reasoning. I feel this, therefore it's true. Not necessarily. Sometimes, but not necessarily. Right? That's another assumption. I assume if I feel hurt, somebody did something hurtful. Maybe, or maybe not. And this is also the place where we get into expectations can both help and hurt, right? So like with the work example, if the expectation is I ask you to stay late and you're going to say yes, and then you say no, that discrepancy between expectation and reality sets you up for a certain emotional experience. If you walk into that with a different set of expectations, it could set you up for a different emotional experience, right? If I walk into this scenario and don't expect you to say yes, and I genuinely think like I have no idea and I will figure it out either way, well, then if that person says no, that emotional experience might be different. So we can actually do a lot for ourselves in terms of emotional regulation, whether it's at home or at work or at the grocery store, if we can be aware of the set of expectations. And it even influences our thinking. So like at the grocery store, if I expect the cashier to be super friendly and bubbly and then she's not, I might walk out of there being like, oh, what a witch. But if I expect like, hey, you work at Walmart and this sucks, I do not expect you to be happy, then I'm just like, another day.
When you say that, in a way, it brings up the idea that I think gets presented specifically to managers as a strategy, with the whole setting the expectations low so that you can over deliver. So under promise, over deliver, trying to mess with somebody's expectations and set them in such a way that it's easy for you to exceed them and thus potentially induce a positive experience. I think it's a bad long-term strategy, but that's kind of what I feel like, or what pops into my head when you're bringing up some of those scenarios, is that if I set this expectation really, really low, or I help lower your expectations.
Well, yes. So it operates on a certain set of assumptions. So this is a super good example because, so we had to bring the car to the body shop a few months ago.
You let Hawken drive again.
I did let Hawken drive in. But he's a good driver. This was the deer's fault.
He's an excellent driver.
This was the deer's fault. This was not on him. Anyways, so, okay, the deer hits the car. We have to take the car to the body shop. Great. That's an hour drive for us. It's an hour drive down. It's an hour drive back, right? It's a significant time commitment. I don't know if they did this on purpose or not, right? But they quoted that, okay, we'd have it done on this day, and then they end up getting it done a day or two early. So hypothetically, this could be one of these low expectations, but then we over deliver and you're going to be happy. But it's based on an assumption that the people you're over delivering to, that's going to work for. And so for us, right, I work 410s. He works a lot. He was actually traveling. Now you've called me. I had this blocked into my schedule in one way because it's this 2-hour drive before I talk to you and get the car. Now I'm stressed. I am not happy about this. Like, I'm not mad, but now I'm stressed. Like, you are not getting 5 stars from me because you got it done a day early. It's going to be about your service. So even that premise is based on this assumption of like, oh, they're going to be able to whip right over. This is going to be convenient for them. They're going to be so impressed. And like, none of that was true.
I know it's taught that way. Get it done sooner than you say it will be. Have it priced lower than what you said it would be. You just keep stacking these lower expectations so that you stack the odds and they're going to be more impressed, develop more trust in you. And I think it's a bad long-term strategy. It's going to work at first a little bit, but a far better long-term strategy would be set the expectations high and dare not to meet them. That's that wow factor. That's where they expect excellence and you continuously deliver it. That's where you get the dedication, that loyalty, the word spread. They have no problems speaking extremely highly of you. Going to a movie and they just downplay the movie, and then you go and it's like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Are you necessarily going to go around and tell all your friends, like, you got to see this movie. You have to see this movie. It's so good. You got to see this band in concert. They are so good. It wasn't because everyone told, or not everyone, but the band or the marketing told you it's going to be like, it'll be all right. It's cheap here. It's inexpensive. It'll be a good way to spend a couple hours. And then wow, it's better than you said it would be. Wow, this is great.
It's a fascinating strategy because when we look at what actually develops trust in any type of relationship, whether it's personal or professional or a person, an organization, trust does not come from low expectations. Trust comes from consistency, reliability, and things being realistic. Trust doesn't come if I expect something that's totally unreasonable and then it's not met, right? That destroys trust, actually. And just like if I don't expect much from you, it probably means I also don't have much trust or faith in you either.
Exactly.
So Hawkins at hockey today. I trust that he's going to come home after hockey, but I also expect it. And every time that happens, that trust strengthens because I'm like, right, I have 10 years of evidence that tells me this is what happens. So I can both expect it and have trust in it.
So yeah, we have expectations that they'll eventually get their car back.
I mean, we already got it back. It was a few months ago, but
someday you'll get the car back.
So we did. We got the car back. Okay, great. And as I'm driving home, this is our brand new car. It's a 24. I noticed that it's pulling to the right. Who was not expecting the brand new car that just got done in the body shop to be pulling to the right as I was leaving the body shop to drive an hour home? That did not line up with expectations.
I mean, that's what you get. That's what you get for having expectations. And
that's what you get. Yeah, right.
Especially these high ones.
I know. Was that a realistic expectation to think my car would drive straight?
It was. It was. Honestly, you're supposed to get it back, and it's, as far as you can tell, the way it was before the collision or accident or mishap.
Yes, and to be clear, it wasn't pulling to the right after the collision.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
Right. And so then of course, right, so I make a phone call and I have another set of expectations about how this complaint is going to be handled and greeted, right?
Yeah, with embarrassment, probably.
An apology was sort of my minimum of like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, we'll take care of that for you, blah, 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 blah. And then there's another set of expectations about, okay, when I take this car back and I drop it off and you fix it, okay, great. I come back and I have a set of expectations about how the keys are going to be handed over, right? What was not part of my set of expectations was when the front desk person said, oh yeah, I'm glad we could get this fixed for you. Sorry that happened. I hope you'll still give us a good Google review.
Oh.
Right. Okay. So what are the expectations of that person in that scenario? And what are mine in that scenario? And we are not on the same wavelength on that moment.
It makes me wonder, partially, how are people compensated? I think maybe the last episode I talked about something called the Cobra effect. But essentially it's about setting rewards. And then people work the system to maximize the reward. And you may get repercussions you didn't foresee, negative things happening or bad things happening. So in this case, if their rewards, compensation or recognition or whatever are based on customer service indexes or reviews, the focus isn't on let's get the car right, let's get the review. And they're not necessarily winding it back going, if we properly service this vehicle or we properly repair this vehicle, they are more likely to leave a good review. That is how I'm going to get the good reviews, instead of kind of like the salesman thing where you ask for the sale. ask for the review. That must work with some people though, or maybe more people than not, where, well, I had to bring it back, so I'm not going to give them a 5-star, but I'll give them a 4-star. And if they just average 4.5 stars, 4.2 stars or whatever, they're happy. And it's driven because when people are asked for something, they generally do it. And it's hard for them to leave really bad reviews for not like a horrible experience. So it's just like playing the game.
It was a fascinating experience. The one thing I will say, there at least was no boundary crossing in that request, right? She owned it. Like, I hope you will do that. Okay, well, you can hope that all day long, right? The problem is she's talking to a therapist who's like, yeah, people hope for lots of things. Doesn't mean I deliver. Who cares? But there was at least no boundary crossing there, right? It was, I hope you'll do this. Okay, great. Hope for that. Did I do that? No.
Yeah.
And there's also an interesting thing there around expectations around how do we expect the other person to experience this moment with us, right? And does that line up with reality? So I'd be so curious to know what her expectation was. What did she expect my experience of that to be versus how I actually experienced it and how much of a discrepancy was happening?
That's not normally how things are discussed in our world. So you may have found another subject to breach in your growing educational career, because I think that is an important one. We just don't think that way. You don't, just to kind of twist it a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I'm teaching this personnel development and management course in November here at Super Saturday. And there is a section in there around what do we expect from people during development, right? We have an employee, we've identified an issue, we've developed a plan to address the issue, we've actually done that with them. Now, what are our expectations around growth and development? And I think for a lot of people, there is an expectation of, well, I've told them this isn't okay, I've trained them on how to do it, now I expect them to do it. And what we actually know about human performance and the brain is that isn't how it works. A realistic expectation is, yes, maybe they will do that sometimes, and then they will revert back to the old thing they were doing before, and you're going to have to discuss this multiple times. And that is a realistic expectation. And if we go into a period of development with that expectation, we're less likely to be frustrated and shaming and blaming towards someone than if we expect, oh, we've had the discussion, we're good now, they're going to be different now. No, they're not.
It's my assumption that people look into this a little bit, and I don't think they do. But I find that to be an odd expectation simply because if you were to graph virtually anything out involving behavior or like learning, I think that's a popular one to look into, how people learn. That graph is far from linear. It doesn't have a nice even slope to it. It's erratic. It trends up, but it's erratic. And that would be probably, we could darn near overlay those and you'd have a similar response with a behavior change. Essentially, that's what we're talking about, right?
Well, we are, but now apply it to something that you expect to be obvious. So let's do it showing up for work on time. That feels like it should be obvious, right? But let's say you have someone who's chronically late, like this is an issue for them. And so your area of development is now, okay, you have to show up for work on time. How many people have the discussion of you have to show up to work on time and then think to themselves, yeah, we're going to have this conversation 10 more times before it actually happens reliably?
Depends on if they have millennial children. Just kidding.
Maybe. Could be. Like that helps. Having kids might help with expectations, or it might hurt, depending.
Yeah, I just know that that's one of the main complaints from employers with younger employees, which now I guess now they're older yet, and I don't know if that's still the same, but at the time when they're fairly fresh out of school, they must have thought the shop moved or something. They couldn't find the shop. They got lost, or they thought they had flex time. I don't know, maybe that's a communication issue. We didn't set the expectation early on and they just thought they had flex time.
Before diving in with someone about, hey, you have to do this, really asking like, okay, so why is this happening? Like, help me understand what your take on this is. Do you think this is important? Do you think it's a problem? How do you think I think about this? I mean, the things people will say are just utterly fascinating, and it might tell you a lot.
Yeah, it'll borderline the absurd to, I never thought about that, or I didn't know that. I guess I can think of a bunch of different scenarios, but it doesn't really matter. It just means actually talking to somebody, and like you said, almost like, or not almost, getting better about approaching things with genuine curiosity and how effective that can be with A, tempering your responses, and B, getting to the root cause of something or closer to it. It's one of those things. We're not taught that and anywhere in our schooling careers. At no point in most families, I don't think households really work that way unless you're raised by therapists. And even then, who knows? They walk in the door for home and I'm sick of this therapy crap.
All bets are off then.
All bets are off. But yeah, approaching with genuine curiosity helps a lot of that communication stuff, and learning while you're asking questions, your expectations versus their expectations versus how they're, explaining or addressing not meeting those expectations without you setting really, I don't know if traps is quite the right word, but do you have expectations of how things are going to be? And if they're not that way, it really doesn't matter what you say. It's going to be firmly rejected. Where if you're genuinely interested and curious, it just changes ever so slightly, but very meaningfully, your attitude towards what they're going to say.
The key with expectations in the workplace is you get to have some expectations around performance and observable behavior, right? So like showing up to work on time is an observable behavior that we can measure. It isn't necessarily reasonable or realistic to have expectations around what somebody else thinks of that or feels about that or the story they tell themselves about that, right? We can have expectations around you need to show up to work on time. So the point in curiosity isn't about not having that expectation. It's about, can I get a more nuanced understanding about why this is a problem for this person, which then points me in the direction of their developmental needs. And then I can tailor how I interact with them to try and be more effective based on what I understand about their development. If they're someone who my past job said as long as I was here within the half hour, it was fine. Okay, that's a different developmental concern than, well, I have to get the kids on the bus, and if the bus comes late, you're going to get me late, versus just someone who's kind of entitled, who's like, why? Why does that matter? If the work gets done, who cares? Right? Those are three different things. You have the same expectation for all of them, but how you're going to interact with that is going to vary.
I'm probably going to be bringing up something dangerous an hour into this. Not dangerous, but it could be a rabbit hole. With expectations, and as far as I know, and now you could crush me on this, as far as I know, we really have not been able to explain, or really, there's very, very little evidence shown that there's something as true altruism. Meaning people do things selflessly with zero expectations. I think in very maybe specific situations they might, but I don't know that it's actually true that expectations aren't fundamentally bad, but the problem is when does it cross the line between reasonable and unreasonable, and therefore because true altruism might not actually exist, we're going to have expectations. So now how do we regulate a little bit? And some of it's going to be feedback, obviously. I might think my expectations of what you're going to say on this podcast are reasonable. And then you say whatever, and maybe I challenge you on something about it and find out, oh, no, Matt, those were unreasonable expectations or whatnot. Is there a way to regulate on your own if you don't have the benefit of good feedback?
Another way to think about expectations, or another definition for them, are either firmly held beliefs or predictions or inferences. And so what that tells us, and where people get into trouble with expectations, is kind of at the intersection between expectations and cognitive distortions. I think this, therefore it's true. It gets very black or white. You should be this way. Everybody thinks the same as me, right? That's that generalization. And so if your expectations are intersecting with those cognitive distortions, it sets you up for conflict with other people and the world at large. Or let's say there's been a poor sample size, right? Let's say you're doing something illegal and you've done it 56 times and you haven't been caught. And so then there's the expectation that, oh, I can do this and nothing bad happens. Well, what happens on the 57th time when you get caught? That was an unrealistic expectation because it was illegal. Sure, you could get away with it, but the idea that that's going to hold out forever, how realistic is that? And so it's this process not only of feedback but developing some personal insight into, can you catch your own expectations? And can you start to modulate those and recognize when they don't line up with reality or the reality of who someone else is? This is a funny personal example, but it's between you and I. So tonight when you texted me and you're like, what time does this work for you? And I said, well, to Matt, what time does it work for you? Hypothetically, my expectation is Matt's going to send me a time. Matt did not send me a time.
Nobody that knows Matt is remotely surprised.
Correct. Exactly. That's the point, right? Is in my interactions with some friends, it would be reasonable to expect a time. That's what they do, right? And so it would be easy to walk into that scenario with you and be like, okay, this is what's going to happen. And then I'm taken aback by what happens next, which is Matt does not send a time. But if I could keep in my head the reality of who Matt is, I could be like, all right, yeah, he's going to say something and you're going to have to select a time.
Redirect.
But that's that process of as a person, we have to modulate that and we have to assess, am I putting a set of expectations on this person or this scenario that doesn't actually line up with the reality of that person or the scenario? Same thing with me. If somebody comes to me and has an expectation of, okay, Margaret's going to be super nice and gentle about this, well, maybe or maybe not.
Yeah, they're like, I thought she was from Minnesota.
I thought she was nice.
Yeah, what the heck?
I know. It's a disappointing moment.
We're supposed to be more like Canadians. Jeez.
Yeah.
I like to employ something called verbal Aikido. Just redirect.
Redirect. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, it doesn't work in fistfights, but Aikido is pretty good and verbally. I don't know what I do.
You're indirect.
I have no strategy.
You're indirect. You sort of allude to things and then people are left to I think that means this.
Yeah, I'll let you infer, and then when you're wrong, I'll just make sure you know you're wrong. And then
yeah. It was very bad of you to be wrong, too.
It was very bad. How dare you? I'm so disappointed. My expectations were not met.
Yes, and lucky for us, we have all learned that your disappointment is yours to manage and nobody else's. I think your wife should use that on you the next time you're disappointed.
In the next few minutes, I'm sure. Oh, man. I almost feel obligated also to bring up something that seems unrelated, but I find it just intertwined. It's really the idea of cooperative, I guess it wouldn't have to necessarily be cooperative, but it should be cooperative game theory, where in a way you can make some predictions of maybe not what someone's responses will be or, what your expectations are, but you can formulate based off your expectations and your behavior, setting yourself up to be in the best spot, regardless of their response or how they respond to your expectations. And the example would be, and this, I guess I'm going to apologize because this is really off the cuff, but the example of this would be the prisoner's dilemma, which I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's essentially two people have gotten caught doing something illegal. They're stealing televisions and they both get caught, and then they're a team, but the police put them in two separate rooms. They're not allowed to talk to each other. They're not allowed to strategize. The police officers go to them separately and give them scenarios where if you admit fault and they plead innocent, you're going to end up spending a lot of time in prison. And if you admit guilt and they admit guilt, you're going to spend less time in prison, but more than if you plead innocent and they plead guilty. So the best case for you would be you deny, plead innocent, and they plead guilty. That would be the best for you. But if they plead guilty and you plead guilty, you're going to serve a fair bit of time. And it turns out that the cooperative scenario is the best consistently. And this is proven, and again, I'm doing this off the cuff. They held some contests for people to write small programs using game theory against one another. It was very simple, where basically it was just X's and O's. You could either be cooperative or uncooperative. And what they found was the programs that were the most cooperative consistently were the most successful. And I guess where I'm going with that is going in with such thoughts of what your expectations are versus the various ways people could respond and how you would respond. If your intent is more cooperative consistently, you're going to put yourself in a much better position over time, regardless of what they choose.
Correct. Yes.
And so therefore, it's a subject I want to keep diving more into because I think it's a rabbit hole, but I think it holds a lot of information for us to make decisions, not just business wise, like big business versus business and marketing and stuff like that, but also interpersonal.
Well, 100% true. It's a good point because I think there is a little bit of a misconception in the world that kind of evolutionarily speaking, we've evolved to be selfish, which isn't actually inherently true because humans are inherently social beings and we've organized into these social structures because we do better when there is some degree of social cooperation, right? That is how we function best. Our brains structurally are actually wired for that. So that belief is A, just inaccurate, but B, when we kind of look at it in modern life, in my world, we call it relational thinking, which is there's you, there's me, and then our relationship is its own separate entity. And the relationship does better when you and me don't focus on you focusing on you and me focusing on me. But if we're both thinking about what is best for the relationship in this moment, so even if my partner is behaving badly, it is best for the long-term health of the relationship that I pull myself together and do not reciprocate. And it's actually the same thing in business, right? There's this certain degree of systemic thinking of what is best for the business long-term. And it isn't, hey, I have an employee or a manager who's being a jerk right now. I might want to fire back and be a jerk back, but actually what's best for the long-term health of the business is if I maintain control of myself and think through this and step away or whatever it is. That's best for the long-term culture of the business, which is going to drive all that other stuff. And so there's also a set of expectations there, right? We can learn to expect that type of behavior from other people. So if I'm having a bad day and I go low, do I expect the people around me to sync with me? Or over time, do I expect that they're going to pull me back up again and I will do the same for them? Which is both expectation and trust.
It's back to the trend. It's back to that graph we're talking about where if you were looking at everything very granularly, that there's going to be specific times where you were really low and others were low too. I don't mean it necessarily blame, but maybe a little more cause and effect, partially because you were low.
Yes. So we call it differentiation. You're actually talking about a known concept, which is my ability to maintain myself while in a relationship with another person. So how much can I, even when you're experiencing an intense emotion, maintain myself and not get sucked into the vortex of that? And the more we strengthen that differentiation, the better relationships tend to go, right? If you're getting sucked into that lowness with your partner, then nobody's doing relational thinking and things suffer.
So I think granularly that happens from time to time, and maybe especially early on. But over time, especially that trend, you're going to see more and more often they're bringing you up and vice versa. I think people just get so focused on these single points, they forget about the trend. And it doesn't matter what we're talking about. It could be shop owners. I'm telling you, like if they get a bad check, they're talking about new rules of we're not taking checks anymore. You haven't gotten a bad check in 10 years and you got one. And it sucks. It does. It sucks. But really, you're going to make this big shift because one, or employees are ready to quit because they feel like they got taken advantage of once. When's the last time you really felt like the shop took advantage of you or your boss took advantage of you? Can you even remember the last time? I don't remember it. But you're ready to quit? Just get so focused on these little singular events. Never step back and look at the trend. It's insane.
Well, and it's not only about that, right? It's also that emotional reasoning of, okay, I feel taken advantage of. Was I?
Yeah, true.
Like that actually matters. Because if somebody actually did take advantage of you, I might support quitting in that scenario. There's a difference between feeling it and it being reality, right? And so even with the check scenario, okay, I feel that this was a big deal. Well, okay, if it was a $50 check, maybe it wasn't. If it was a $5,000 check, maybe it was. So maybe there does need to be a rule shift there. So some of it is like not only the trend, but is it reality? How big of a deal was it? If it was reality, like there's some nuance there.
Where do you really go? I mean, just on the expectations, because that's what we're talking about is almost by position or by wherever you are on the hierarchy of the business, kind of checking your expectations. And then I think the big one is where and how do you start communicating the expectations? Because for the most part, I think a lot of businesses try to convey the expectations through an employee handbook. But other than that, I don't know if there's a lot of spoken expectations. And certainly it's really pretty rare that it reverses where the employees are explaining their expectations.
When we're looking at businesses, right, some expectations are both agreed upon in writing at the beginning and are somewhat implicit, right, of usually things around pay, schedule, maybe there's some type of training around workplace policies and procedures, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So that's relatively explicit. And then over time, there's an expectation of like, this will continue to be true. And there does need to be ongoing communication about those things. We can't just have the conversation once and then expect someone's going to retain all that knowledge and keep doing it. And also, things shift and change. And so we have to be kind of continually both communicating our expectations and giving the opportunity for some feedback of, do these still work? So I think about even like with one of my supervisees, we were talking about documentation. And I said, okay, as long as you have this done by Friday, I'm satisfied. Are you good with that? Okay, yes, I can do it tomorrow. Great. It was easy, right? And then if it's not done on Friday, then I follow up. Hey, where's this at? What's going on? And then I check. And then over time, we just keep doing that. And sometimes you can even reverse it of, okay, when do you expect to have this done? And then you follow up if that isn't met, right? Okay, I thought you mentioned this would be done on Tuesday. What's going on? And so sometimes it's not even about explicitly saying this is an expectation. It's just that open dialogue where we're continually going back and forth. It helps us set expectations of this is what the week and life is going to look like. Where we actually get in trouble is where there's not communication and we're operating based on unspoken expectations, which are really just assumptions.
And usually ends up conflict somewhere down the line, big conflict. Because, there was no expectation. Well, okay, there was expectations, but I kept mine to myself and you kept yours to yourself. And then everybody assumes everything and then it blows up.
Right, exactly. And so if we have really good communication in general and we're dealing with reality, the expectations are there. We know them. To some degree, feedback should be so common and reciprocal in any relationship, whether it's business or personal, that it's a non-event. Like it shouldn't even be a thing. It's just like It becomes an expected part of daily life. I expect that you're going to tell me things. You expect that, I'm going to tell you things, and we're going to go back and forth. And it just is.
Yeah. And depending on what it is too, right? Like the expectations could be set as almost like needs to certain degrees. And in some cases it is. It's flat out like a client comes to you and like, I've heard really good things about you guys. I really want to bring my vehicle here, but I need somebody to be able to drop me off at work. I need somebody to come be able to pick me up from work. And the shop could say, absolutely no problem. Or, oh, what time? That's after we close. I don't know if I can do that. And then the opportunity for compromise. Like, okay, well, you can't come get me at 6. I can ask if I could leave at 5:30. Could you do that? I'll make that work. That could be the norm. And that's, client to business type conversation like that seems a lot easier because they're paying the bills for us. They're giving us the money that we get to redistribute in the shop. Now we reverse that to employee, manager, owner type things where I need this from you. I need you to go to the freaking manual and read it and follow the procedure. And then I'm not sure what the compromise is. Like, this is what I need. This is the expectation. You have to do this. And if you could document it, that would be great.
Right. So notice that's an observable behavior, right? Go to the manual and read it. Great. That's an expectation we're allowed to have for employees. We're not allowed to expect them to like doing that. They don't need to like that. But then there's a point there of like, how do we train that? So something sort of like a parallel with the therapy field, right? With my supervisees, we have our rules and statutes. And so when we're discussing a case, I'll ask, okay, any ethical or legal concerns? Well, no, I don't think so. But let's say I'll have picked up on one. I'm like, well, actually, let's all pull this out right now. And we're all going to turn to this page and we're going to read this statute and we're going to reevaluate that question. Now tell me if there's ethical or legal concerns, right? And so with the employee with the manual, okay, well, did you read the manual on this job? No. Okay, let's pull it out. Page whatever, this section, tell me what this says. So now we have just formed that pathway in the brain, right? So not only do we have an expectation of you doing it, we can also help you develop the skill.
There's got to be a why.
Correct.
Maybe not always. I guess sometimes it's like, my name's on the business. I want you to do it this way. But it helps usually when you back it up with something.
Right. A why helps make it relevant to the employee. My name's on the business doesn't actually make it super relevant. So with my supervisee saying, well, because I'm your supervisor and I said so, that doesn't make it relevant to them. What makes it relevant to them is if you don't do this when you're individually licensed, you're going to get called in front of the board and they're going to tell you, here are your consequences. That sounds like fun to no one.
And that's what I was going to kind of suggest is like with your note taking and documentation, you guys spend a lot of time on documentation and you have to. Auto repair, we're not used to have to follow service procedures. We're just not used to it. I've done 1,000 front brake jobs. I know how to do a front brake job. However, now things change a little bit. And if something were to go awry and you get called in front of, 12 of your peers, your experience is probably not going to be enough to save you, especially if it conflicts with service information. So therefore, now I need you to read, RTFM. I need you to RTFM. Here's why.
Correct. Now it's relevant to them.
Yes.
You just made it matter. My name's on the sign doesn't matter. Saving you from getting in trouble and having to go through that experience, that matters.
Well, I expect that we'll once again have another episode on something else.
I share that expectation, Matt. We're off to a good start.
I usually have lots of ideas, and we could do like rapid fire where it'd just be like 2 months in a row of every episode with Margaret Light on various things, because there's so much going on that we just don't talk about involving psychology and relationships and communication, and it just translates directly with what we do every freaking day. but we haven't ever talked about it. So it just gets glanced over. So I know I've shot many an idea at you, and usually I've received positive feedback.
Yeah. I mean, there's almost nothing I won't talk about in life. So
I'm the same. I can't think of anything I wouldn't talk about.
Yeah, agreed.
No, it doesn't exist. Oh, wait, I know. Country music. Yeah. Don't need to talk about that.
Topic. Okay.
Definitely don't need to talk about that. But I really do appreciate you coming on, and can't wait for the next time we get together and talk about who knows what else. But I expect it to be awesome.
Thank you. Same. I look forward to it.
This is Margaret Light, licensed marriage and family therapist, who is also the owner of Equilibrium Therapy Services. Look her up. She's licensed for the state of Minnesota, and she has a blossoming career and instructor-led classes at some of our trade shows, expos. She will be at Super Saturday. Definitely check her out. And then hopefully in more and more, because she's going to bring just a different angle that we have not gotten in really forever. I can't think of anyone that's bringing these topics in from the angle she's bringing them in at. And so it'll be a really good breath of fresh air. And I mean, it's all about perspective. We all need more and more perspective, different perspectives.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, it's true though. I mean, usually it's a great gift, a different perspective. If you can see something from a different perspective or acknowledge it even, for crying out loud. But yeah, thank you again for listening. And thank you to our sponsor, NAPA Autotech Training. Thank you to the Aftermarket Radio Network. And until next time, take care.
You've been listening to Matt Fanslow, diagnosing the aftermarket A to Z on the Aftermarket Radio Network. Follow Matt on your favorite listening app. He's very interested in what you have to say. Let him know what you'd like him to cover and come on the show. Matt is all for advancing the aftermarket. Find Matt Fanslow on social media and connect or on aftermarketradionetwork.com.